So who knows that Yahveh means what he says? People turn around and say, oh yeah, but he didn't really mean that, did he? Yes. So when he says, I was, I am, I will be, which is what Yahveh means I was, I am, I will be. So he was telling the people of Israel, I was, I am, I will be. He's got it all covered. And this truth has never changed or ever will be. Redeemed Jews and Gentiles are to worship him in the Spirit and in truth. Why? Because he says so. What more reason do you need? You don't have to wait for a sign. If he says it, do it. Be obedient. Why? Because he's our Creator, our Father, our Abba. Yeshua HaMashiach said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. There is no confusion or conflict. He said, I am the way, the truth and the life. And that there's no other way to the Father but through me. And you either accept that statement or you don't. And if you accept that statement, what are all these other religions doing? Why did he say that? Because he and the Father are one. There are no separate gods. 3 separate gods. And I've done this before with messages and things and say, who do you relate to? Some people relate to Yeshua, some people relate to the Father, and some people relate to the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. And they get confused. And they pray to one, and then they pray to the other, and they're not really sure who they're praying. You just need to understand that it's all one. 3 parts of the same deity, the same Father. There is no separate God. There is no separate Old Testament and New Testament. And the reinterpreted God of a reinterpreted New Testament. And yet in daily Western practice, that's exactly how people behave. Most Jewish people, the reason they get upset is say, oh, they worship this Western God, Jesus. That's how they see it. That they're worshipping the Jewish God, and these people are worshipping a foreign God called Jesus. And this is a stumbling block for them. So it's how people behave and pray, almost as if he has a split personality. He doesn't have a split personality, he's one. One of the reasons why we say the Shema is we specify and we're quite clear, he is one. And again, Jewish people get confused because we say, no, he's not one, he's 3. And I turn around to them and say, well, you've got that wrong, because in Revelation it says he's 7. 7-fold Spirit. Who says it only stops at 3? They pray directly to Yeshua in spite of the fact that he has always pointed us straight to the Father. He never once said, pray to me. He said, pray through me. He always said, the Father, the Father, the Father, the kingdom, the kingdom, the kingdom. Never once asked people to worship him. He never once asked people to worship his mother, or his brother, or his father, or anybody else. Only one Father he said to worship, and that was the Father. And he even said, I don't say anything that I haven't first heard from him. So we say, oh, Jesus said that. Yes, he did, but he got it first from the Father. He respected his Father. As Jewish and Gentile believers, we have exactly the same Father in common. We have the same spiritual DNA. We may not have the same physical DNA, but we all have the same spiritual DNA the minute we become redeemed believers. We have been called to be a part of a united, undivided kingdom. A set-apart body with all of its own systems, its own national days, its own anniversaries, holy days, remembrance days, and a shared economy. Sometimes people don't realise that the kingdom is just that. It's a kingdom. And for a kingdom to be a kingdom, guess what it has to have in charge of it? But how would a kingdom run if nothing was done and there was nothing in place and there was no systems in place? It would fall apart pretty quickly. The one thing that I've learned, particularly from reading the first part of the book, is that he is meticulous, absolutely meticulous in what he does and says and plans. All the way through this, he actually probably talks more about money than praying. Why? Because it speaks to the heart. Speaks to where your heart is and where you... It's a teaching tool, if you like. Money isn't evil, money is neutral. Does whatever you tell it to. Worshipping it is evil. So we have our own systems in place. He says, my ways are not your ways. If you went to Israel today, you would actually... These days that we're talking about here would just be normal holidays. If you went to Poland, they would have special days that we know nothing about. And if you're in Poland and they're on those days, whether you like it or not, those are those days. They have their own customs, they have their own finances, they have their own ways of doing things, their own customs, things like that. Any kingdom has its own systems. They have their own national days, their own anniversaries and holy days, remembrance days. And more importantly, they have a shared economy. We're always asking Abba to give us stuff, but we're forgetting what we're doing is asking him to give stuff out of his treasury. Well, he wouldn't have a treasury unless we gave stuff into the treasury. It works both ways. New Zealand wouldn't be able to spend billions of dollars on things that aren't necessary if we didn't give them billions of dollars in taxes. Yeah, 26 million for a flag that we may or may not get yet. These one new man biblical feasts, and this is what we need to understand is, these feasts and festivals were put in place before there was a Jewish people. Yeah. These are one new man. He created one new man. And he created specific festivals that are his designated times for his one new man to celebrate. These are daily, monthly and yearly reminders of our joint identity and purpose as a body. In the historical plans that Yahveh has for all mankind, both Jew and Gentile. Torah teaches us that these designated times are the prophetic rehearsals of our messianic redemption. Properly understood, they tell the story of the birth and life, atoning work, death, resurrection and return of Messiah. They're promises of power, assurances of dedication, return of eternal abiding of the Messiah Yeshua, in and through all trusting, genuine followers. It is inconceivable that Abba wouldn't want his children to have a thorough and detailed, intimate knowledge of all of these aspects of his son's ministry. Yet for nearly 2,000 years, through religious intolerance and ignorance, our understanding and appreciation of these feasts have remained marginal at best and non-existent at worst. They're done away with. Not by my people. The ongoing drive to work 24/7 never stops. I constantly hear the last couple of days of the year when shops aren't allowed to open, there's a drive to make every one of those open as well. Yeah. Basically they're saying, well, everybody out there thinks New Zealanders are hicks because they don't open on this day and that day. There's a drive to just constantly, it's slavery, to work 24/7. It never stops. Because apparently we don't have enough hours in the day. I don't know who made that mistake, but because there's not enough hours in the day, our striving is never satisfied. And our drive for perfection is never achieved. Why? Because from a humanist capitalist point of view, there is no profit in such idleness as a Shabbat rest. There's no profit in it. Man is regarded as a resource to exploit. I remember a lot of years ago when I first was studying and I did work at McDonald's, is they stated the McDonald's yeah, not a motto, but like the work ethic. And the basic work ethic is, there are thousands of 16-year-olds out there. We drive them into the ground, and when we've driven them into the ground, we chuck them out and get more. They're a disposable asset. And that's how the world sees people. Yeah. We're a disposable asset. You drive them into the ground, you make them do more hours for less money, and then when you burn out, they turn around and say, oh dear, they obviously were a bit weak. Let's get somebody to replace them. It's not the way to treat people. And unfortunately, I see many ministries operating on the same principle.
If you watch that program on Channel 12, you realise that they themselves can't perform either.
No, of course they can't.
Even though they own the business.
Yeah. People put 40, 50 years into a business and they're loyal to it and everything else like that, and then suddenly somebody comes along, buys up the business, makes them redundant. They're not going to get another job at 50, 60. Just not going to happen. Nobody wants them. There's plenty more to replace them. Unfortunately for them, things are changing. You're getting a much larger, older population now, and a lot less younger people, and suddenly now they're talking about extending the retirement age. Why are they doing that? Because they're running out of workers.
Trying to save money.
Yeah.
See, I think a lot of companies realise that the younger generation are unreliable.
Yeah, we were. We always have been. The good thing is we get older, and the next generation, they're unreliable. We've all been unreliable. We were all unreliable when we were teenagers. I think it's because we recognise it in ourselves that we get uptight with the present generation. So we're classed as beasts of burden, drones, robots, slaves to the world system. But it's no different from the Egyptians to the Greeks to the Romans and the Victorian European culture. Every day was a work day. Children will work 12, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. Every day was a day to generate profit. And an endless slavery to the systems in place like today's blind servitude to the current multinational corporate consumer culture. A system that's no different to the rampant economic exploitation of our third world cultures. We all talk about the exploitation of the third world cultures. They don't get worked as hard as us. They haven't got jobs. They work to eat. They work to feed themselves. We work to make profit. We have to build bigger homes because we've got bigger things and more things to put in them. The love of money and image are the twin idols that are bowed down to and worshipped by the haves and the have-nots. Two economic ends of an ever-increasing gap. People forget that it's not just those that have it that worship money, it's those that don't have it worship it as well. They want it. They've got it, they want it. They're both just as greedy.
And they provide the most money for the bank. They've got it.
Yes. Remember these poor banks that they had to bail out a few years ago? Now they're making record profits. Are they paying back the governments that bailed them out? No. So there's an ever-increasing gap between those that have wealth and power and those that want it at any price. So Yeah, this is negative. Is there a solution to this economic and time-based slavery? Of course. We are part of a different system. We come from a different kingdom with different priorities and different goals. We just need to be brave enough to implement them. We just need to put our full trust in our sovereign's ability and His promises to fully meet our needs, but not our greeds. As I said before, enough is what we need to pray for. We don't need to pray for too much. We don't need to pray that He would starve us and then we could be far more spiritual. We just need to pray for enough. That's the lesson of the wilderness. That every day, no matter how much they gathered, and some would have been greedy and some wouldn't, but at the end of the day, they all had just enough. Nobody had too much, nobody had too little. And on Fridays, they had a double portion.
And they didn't all rush off to work in the wilderness either.
No. I mean, some people may not know, but in Israel, people start work Sunday morning. They've had Shabbat. Sunday morning is the first day of work. It's the first day of the week anyway. It's not the seventh day. Seventh day is Saturday. The first day of the week, day one, is Sunday. That's normal. We need a paradigm shift to become dependent on His economy that sets us free to choose His plans for our lives based on His ways. We want freedom to keep Yahweh's designated times and seasons, His weekly Shabbats, His special convocations, and His divine appointments with us. How many people think the Creator made a mistake and shortchanged us when He set the sun and moon to regulate time? Has the moon changed speed? Has the sun changed speed? Gets up the same time every morning, sets at the same time every day. Yes, there's a shift in times in that, but it's still that same amount of time in between. It's either light or it's dark. That's the clock. I've told the story many times about my daughter who's from Auckland. And like most Aucklanders, got up the nose of some farmers up in near Walkley somewhere, wasn't it? Anyway, all day long she kept turning around saying, "What time is it? What time is it?" And eventually he turned around and said, "It's daytime. And later on, it'll be night time. Don't ask me again." We even had to have seconds added to our watches. That's how desperate we are. People win gold medals at the Olympics by milliseconds. We are the ones who have allowed others with different agendas to rob us of the freedom of choice for times and seasons and holidays. We are the ones that have allowed others to drive us relentlessly into a life of stress and disappointment as we strive to keep up with the Joneses or their current disciples, the Kardashians. Or in the majority of cases, just to put food on the table and a roof over our heads. The one thing He promises in His Word is that He will always feed us and He will always give us a roof over our heads. We don't need to worry about it. May not be the roof we want to, may not be the food we particularly like, but He's promised to do it. I know He's a big fan of fish.
Well, it seems like there are people out there working just to stay broke.
Exactly, that's right. Most people, I know they've done surveys and studies, most people are 1 week away from bankruptcy. If they suddenly didn't get a pay packet that week, they'd be in absolute strife. And most people with all the nice big houses and the big cars are actually worse off. They're already broke. They just don't know it yet because they've still got bits of plastic. But when the day comes and they have to pay it back, they're in big trouble. Because they haven't got it to pay it back, otherwise they wouldn't use cards. Am I saying this to be condemning? No, but I'm just saying we need a different system. We need to follow His system, His way of doing things.
Yeah, we need to cancel debts every 7 years and get the land back.
Ready to think through next.
And because they don't do it, you get political collapse, and God actually doesn't
Yeah.
steer it out. It comes to a big bang.
The governments of the world do not rule the world. The multinational corporations rule the world. The governments do as they're told. He wants to liberate us from the tyranny of these slave masters, the digital atomic clock that never stops, the clock that drives us towards burnout. Torah calls these holy convocations the designated feasts of Yahveh. They are oases or islands in time. And the most important feast or festival of all is Shabbat. So every week we're entitled to a day off. His day, His time. It's a time for all mankind. He created Shabbat at creation. There was only one mankind at creation. And He created it and said, I'm giving it to you as a gift. As has always been said from Jewish people, it's not that the Jews have kept Shabbat, but that Shabbat has kept the Jews. Feasts in the present English language simply mean entertainment, food or a banquet. So when you say feast, they automatically think food, banquet. It's not what a feast is. There may be those things at the feast, but chag, which is what the word for feast is, actually means to revolve, to circle, to reel to and fro, to dance and rejoice, to celebrate, to be giddy or happy. So you see, Gaynor and the rest of the ladies have got it right. Having a festival, having a feast is all about dancing and rejoicing and being glad. Even allowed to be giddy and happy. Make a change for some people. The frozen chosen. Everything's serious. Even the ultra-Orthodox once a year get drunk and dance. Round and round and round and round in circles. Yeah. So for those who stubbornly persist in their brainwashed thinking that these are all OT, under the law Jewish feasts, they need to understand who and what they're ignoring. These are Yahweh's designated holy days. They're His permanent regulations through all generations, no matter where we live. So does that include New Zealand? Yes. So they have never ever been done away with, except by some Roman emperor in the 4th century. They were observed and celebrated by Yeshua and His followers both before and after His resurrection. You think if He'd done some way with something that He wouldn't have celebrated them after His resurrection, would you? But He did, and they did. And that applies to all redeemed believers everywhere. Prophecy makes very plain that everyone everywhere will be required to observe Yahweh's holy days after His return in Jerusalem. If they don't, they will face His wrath, described as the punishment of all nations that refuse to be obedient and come up to Zion's hill or Jerusalem to keep Sukkot, the Feast of Booths. And I'll leave it there, but Zechariah 14:16 to 19, page 785, outlines what will happen to the nations. The plagues, the drought, if they don't come up to Jerusalem every year for Sukkot. This week we celebrate the first of the 3 remaining holy convocations that are to be fulfilled by Yeshua when He returns. As established by Yahveh, Yom Teruah, or shofars or trumpets, Yom Kippur, atonement, and Sukkot, booths, that follow on from the first 4 earlier in the year. Again, all harvest festivals. It's all about different harvests: wheat, the barley, the grapes, the whatever, olives, spring and autumn. So why should we be the least bit bothered about them today? What's significant about them for us, particularly if we're not Jewish? Because the first four have already been fulfilled by Yeshua HaMashiach at redemption. And he's planning the other three to be completed when he follows on his return. And once he's done that, every prophecy in this book will have been fulfilled. They are the last prophecies to be fulfilled. Did Yeshua keep the feasts and convocations? Yes. But you say you're following him, but you don't do feasts and convocations, then you're not following him. Why did he keep them? First of all, because he was born and lived as an observant Jew. And that shocks a lot of Gentiles, and it shocks a lot of Jews. And they say, oh, no, he's a Gentile God. And they say, no. He was a good Jewish boy with a Jewish mama, who was very proud of him. And he kept all the festivals and all the feasts, and he went up to Jerusalem every year, like all Jewish males were commanded to do, for the three main festivals of the year. One of them was Pesach, one of them was Sukkot. The other one was Shavuot. He observed all of them then. Secondly, because he was completely obedient. And he kept all of the appointments with his father. Do you realise these are appointments? They're not festivals, they're appointments. And if we don't keep those appointments, we're showing a lot of disrespect. Abba's going to be there. He always keeps his appointments. So is Shabbat for Gentiles as well? Yes, absolutely. Because it's not our Shabbat. It's his Shabbat. It's his day of rest that he set aside for all mankind. Abba instituted it on day 7 of creation. And as I've said before, day 7 is the only day that has a name, Shabbat. Every other day is called by the number of it. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6. Shabbat's the only one with a name. It's a special day. All the others are just numbered days.
All the other days, names are named after pagan gods.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, but in Israel they do the same thing again. They brought a lot of the names from the Babylonian times that they used for names for months and things like that. So we're all guilty of changing things, but the days don't change. The days are called by their number, even today. So is it an inconvenience? Is it a nuisance that takes us away from fun, important things like sport and shopping? Our real lives? Or is it a necessity? Is it a welcome blessing that is at the centre of our lives, our main focus? And when you talk to a Jewish person about Shabbat, they number the days before Shabbat and the days after Shabbat. Shabbat is the central theme. And every other day is described as day 1 after Shabbat, day 2 after Shabbat, day 3 after Shabbat, or day 6 before Shabbat, or day 5 before Shabbat. That's how they see it all. Shabbat is the central, the other things are peripheral.
Like the menorah.
It's like the menorah.
Shabbat is the center one.
Yeah, Shabbat is the servant.
Yeah.
So is it our main focus? It's measured around the days before Shabbat and the days after Shabbat. Yes, it's a divine appointment. And where your treasure is, your heart will be also. So the bottom line is, who or what are you serving? Who are we actually serving? And our answers to that question will determine the real location of our treasure. So Yeshua tells us to go and teach others to observe and obey everything that He has commanded us. Hasn't He? Well, He kept Shabbat. He kept all the holy convocations. He taught exclusively from the Tanakh, the Old Testament. There was a reason for that, of course, because the New Testament hadn't been written yet. But this is what people say, he taught from the Bible. No, he didn't. He taught from the Old Testament, the Tanakh. Because the new one it was in the process of being written. He never once quoted from the Brit Hadashah because it didn't exist at the time.
Well, even though it's not technically a holy convocation, he also celebrated Hanukkah as well.
Yeah. Yep. He did celebrate Hanukkah. He liked to party with the best of them. He loved to turn the water into wine. And it wasn't grape juice. Sorry.
Jeffrey, I just want to ask a question about the seventh day.
Yes.
Because the Jehovah's Witnesses are most certain that the seventh day is Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
We agree that it's Saturday, but how is it determined that Saturday in our calendar is in fact the Sabbath day? Which begs the question, how do we say that what is the first day of the week? Number one, number two. How do you pin it down? Because nowhere in the Tanakh does it say it's Saturday.
No, it doesn't.
Because it's a different calendar, but there must be some anchoring point, some reference point.
Yeah. Because we've taken it right from the beginning, and in the beginning it said, on day one He created this. On day two, right up to day 6, and then on the 7th day He rested. And so therefore the Jewish days have always been taken on that basis. When the Romans came along and created first of all the Julian calendar.
Yep.
When he created the Julian calendar, often the Jewish weeks, they changed their calendars. Some had 6 days, some had 7, some had 8 days. So they had a different numbers of days and things like that. But they always took it on the basis that the Jewish days, 1 to 6, and then the 7th, were what they centered things on. They tried to veer from it, but it was still at the core of what they did.
You've still got the problem of the first day. Because we weren't there when Hashem created the earth.
No.
So what we're saying is, okay, you've explained why we have Shabbat on the Saturday, but you haven't explained why day number 1 is in fact day number 1 and not number 2.
Initially they would have established what was Shabbat, and it would have come right the way down through the generations, and everything else would have gone either side of that. So that would have been the starting point for them. What other people have done with their calendars is whatever they've done. But even if you ask people about the calendars, you ask people in the Catholic Church about their calendar, which is a Roman calendar, they will say, yeah, we know that Sunday is the first day of the week. Why? Because they take that scripture which says He rose on the first day, and that's why they call it Sabbath. Right. So they've misconstrued the whole thing. He actually rose on Shabbat, right at the end of Shabbat. But even they acknowledge that that's day 1. All the way through this, it describes those times when they kept the Shabbats, kept the feasts, and this is why He gave us the moons and things like that, to designate the times and the seasons and the months and things like that. And even at Pesach He said, this is to be day 1 of the first month of the new year for you. He designated the times, and He showed them what the times were. And then we've taken what we've taken from that. It's not something that somebody just arbitrarily said,
If we won't forget that God actually personally spoke to Moses,
yes.
He would have actually established, right, this is day 1, this is day 2,
yes, He would.
day 3.
Yeah, He did.
And
they've kept it meticulously since then.
Yeah. And since they would have kept it over the years, everyone, the fact is, the Sabbath would have fell on the pagan Saturday.
Yes.
And the whole nation can't be wrong that this is Shabbat and say, no, we're not calling it this one Shabbat. We'll have that tomorrow. So, the whole nation can't be out a day.
Jeff, you had it right before. You had when you first started, you had a board pointing to Jerusalem.
Yes.
And that is the start of the real Sabbath.
That's right.
Because And Jesus is the focal point, because Yeshua kept the Torah 100%, physically and spiritually,
Yeah.
and he kept the Shabbat, and it's based in Jerusalem. The Shabbat starts and finishes in Jerusalem, and all the rest of the world needs to synchronize with it. There's one thing for certain, is today is Shabbat in New Zealand and Jerusalem.
That's right.
At the moment.
That's right.
But if anybody wants some more information, I can explain it, but it's a little bit hard to
Yeah.
pick it up.
So he didn't have the Brit Hadashah, but he did have the Tanakh. He taught by example. And he says, teach them the way I've taught you, by example. He taught by example, not by theory, not by head knowledge. He taught by example. He actually did the things he talked about. He showed us how to live by it, by example, telling us that he'd come to complete Torah, including all of its commandments, and not replace them. So are we like many who think that by merely going to the right building once a week somehow makes us righteous? Going to McDonald's doesn't make you a hamburger. It's not the building you go to, it's not the people you're with, it's the person you have the relationship with. And as a result of a relationship with him, the other people that we have a relationship with. Those whose only relationship with him is to treat him like a car's spare wheel rather than the steering wheel of our lives. Something to be dragged out and used only in emergencies. When we have a breakdown or a problem or feel flat or have an urgent need. And then we keep him hidden in the boot of our lives for the rest of the time, out of sight, out of mind. But as an extra insurance, just in case. I mean, we spend all this money on a spare tyre and it just sits in the back of the car and we rarely ever see it. But we like to keep it there just in case. And a lot of people do that with Yeshua. They do that with redemption. Well, here's a heads up from him to you. A direct voicemail that you can trust and count on. He's checked his diary for this year. He's noted the divine appointments on the 1st of Tishri, the 13th of September, the 10th of Tishri, the 22nd of September, and the 15th of Tishri, the 27th of September. And as always, he's cleared his busy schedule and will be joining us and the two or more gathered in his name for the celebrations. He's issued invitations to you all, and he's waiting for your own personal RSVP. He will be there, will you? Abba created these special days and seasons as a weekly, monthly and yearly oasis in time to enable us to celebrate and spend quality time with him. What parent doesn't want their children to spend quality time with them? Rushing through and grabbing a piece of toast on the way out the door is not quality time. We want to spend quality time with our children. They want us to spend quality time with them. Like I've said many times before, it's not the things you buy them, it's not the presents you buy them, it's not the things you do for them that they remember. What they remember is the time you spent with them. The time you went on a holiday, the time you went to a sports match, the time when you did special things and devoted time to them. And the one thing that we've learned as grandparents is, the reason our grandchildren love us so much is because the thing we've given them is time. We can give them time when the parents are too busy. So grandparents have a special place in the lives of their grandchildren. These are not just some random, ancient Jewish-only rituals. They were designed and still are designed as a gift for all mankind, for the whole planet. A permanent taste of an eternity that exists outside of time. We cannot just make up and create our own holy days to replace this. We cannot just arbitrarily cancel his set-apart times. Why? Because we don't have his permission or authority. A Roman emperor in the 4th century thought he could. I've got news for him, we're still keeping them. They haven't changed. When Yeshua returns again, it will be announced to the entire earth by a shofar blast, Yom Teruah. Next, the final redemption, the separation of the sheep and the goats will take place, Yom Kippur. And then finally, Sukkot will take place, a time of restoration, as He comes back and dwells with us again. But this time, it won't just be for a few years, for 33 years or whatever it was. This time will be for 1,000 years and beyond. The longest honeymoon in history, when He comes back for His bride. Yahveh Himself provided the first sacrifice in the garden, when He killed either a goat or a lamb to provide garments for them. Don't forget, this was a time when they were still vegetarian. So He didn't do this to provide meat for them. He did this to provide clothing for them. The second was a substitute for Yitzhak. When his father was about to sacrifice him out of obedience, in spite of it not making sense, and it was replaced by a ram in the thicket. And the third one was when Yeshua Himself became the perfect permanent substitute. The one who takes His own blood into the Holy of Holies to intercede on our behalf. So the very least that we can do is to acknowledge that on a yearly basis, by celebrating remembrance, redemption and restoration, as we look forward to the final fulfillment of all three. Shalom Chag Yom Teruah. Rejoice, dance, be happy, celebrate, have a holy day. Shalom.